All right, we're back for another edition of Operator Spotlight. Today we got the man that needs no introduction, Erik Bitzko. I will let him do a little bit of introductions about himself, and then we'll get right into some of these questions I have. So Erik, just title, how long you've been with PEC, what your role is, and a little bit about how the program's evolved from, over the last few years.
Yeah, my name is Erik Bitzko. I'm the System Maintenance Supervisor for Pedernales Electric. We've been doing drones since about 2015. We've been slowly scaling to more day-to-day operations over the past few years. We've got a handful of pilots, I think 7 or 8. We're looking to expand to about 24 here by the end of the year. We've got a handful of drones to match. We've got a couple more on order to kind of scale to the needs of the co-op. We primarily focus right now on system reliability inspections and maintenance orientated inspections. We've got about 60 feeders roughly planned for this year, and we're about halfway through. So we've been steady getting after some reliability inspections this year.
Yeah, that was one of my next questions. I know you and I had talked in the past about performance metrics of how many miles you guys flown, how many feeders you guys flew last year. What were those numbers, and restate the goals again for 2020?
So last year we flew about 50 feeders, give or take, for reliability. What we're doing is we're focusing right now on the backbones of the feeders, from substation to open point or dead end or single phase protection, whatever kind of, depending on the breakdown of the feeders. We're kind of taking the same philosophy and approach this year. And we've got about 60 feeders this year planned out. We're about halfway through. Idea behind it is to harden the backbone of our system and then use more of the data-based approach for the taps and the single phase and stuff like that. So by collecting telemetry from either the devices like line reclosers and SEL data coming back in, or even from AMI metering, we're able to kind of pinpoint the sections of line that are having nuisance issues outside of the scope of the backbone. So that's kind of the approach that we've been taking. What we've been able to do with that is kind of lower our SAIDI numbers on average about 15% per year. Last year we were able to end up with about a 45-minute SAIDI number. This year to date, we're at about 42. So before we get to storm season, hopefully we can see some impacts there, or lack thereof impacts if we're doing our job thorough enough. So
right,
that's going to be some of the tracking metrics that we use, and tying that into more of the ROI that we're looking for is lost revenue avoided. So as a utility customer or a utility provider, we don't make money if the meter's not spinning. So, being nonprofit gives us kind of an advantage there. But at the same time, by lowering our SAIDI metrics down, our meters are spinning more, and that's the ROI that we're kind of grading ourselves against as we scale the program.
Okay, and if you don't mind, define what you mean by SAIDI metrics.
So it's a reliability metric that Department of Energy put out a while ago, actually. There's a handful that we use. SAIDI is the big one. That's a System Average Interruption Duration Index. That's across the entire system. And then SAIFI is another one, and that's frequency of interruption. So by incorporating the maintenance inspections with our pole test and treat program and kind of tying it all together, what we're able to do is we're able to lower those metrics down and reduce the duration of the interruptions on our system, as well as reduce the frequency of interruptions on our system. And those are kind of the two main point of attack actions using the drones.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're one of the more active program managers in terms of posting still photos of discrepancies found on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Wanted to know why. Obviously, there is value to everybody else there. I want to know from your own words, what does PEC, what are you specifically achieving by highlighting the value add that you're getting every day through data collection from UAS?
So the main reason why, the main reason why I'm kind of trying to share as much content as possible. Is one, it's an education campaign. Back in early 15, 16, drones were kind of still more military applicable, right? There wasn't really there wasn't a large market for civilian style drones that you see today. And when we went to Hurricane Harvey down towards the coast in Texas, what we found was it wasn't necessarily that we were bringing a tool there. It was more of the host companies that we went and helped doing mutual aid with had no clue how to use the tool, what a drone was. Some folks have heard of it, the stuffing stalkers for their kids during Christmas and stuff like that. And it was starting to kind of gain some traction with the mainstream. But what I found is the first order of business when we went to do mutual aids at all these different companies was I had to educate them on how to use the tool. So that kind of is what started the sharing of my knowledge and sharing of our experience to help other folks, especially in the co-op world, understand, hey, this is a tool that's available to us. It's deployable, it's scalable, and it's extremely useful in multiple different facets of an organization, whether it's a co-op or a muni or an investor owned. And that's kind of spun off into hey, look, this is where we're seeing the largest ROI. I know still there's some hesitancy within the industry, especially the utility industry, on adopting new technologies, and especially where they fit. You have to find a beachhead, if you will, on where to implement it and then how to spread it, right? And that's kind of what stuff is helping facilitate implementation for folks that are a little hesitant on it. And what's working for us doesn't necessarily work for all, but you can take a version and kind of plagiarize away and make it fit your specific use case.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you. Now, what percent of the data collection done on, let's just say, a quarterly basis is the PEC internal team versus outsourced?
So almost nearly 100% is collected internally.
Right.
We do have a handful of special projects, more along the lines of like LiDAR. We do work with third-party companies to come in and do those special use cases. One is the House Bill 4150, I believe it was, that was just passed for navigable waterways in Texas. We have to make sure that our NESC clearances are within standard, and we have to report on that annually. So the best way to do that is with LiDAR. So we've outsourced some of those inspections for those special projects to third party, but almost exclusively we keep everything in house and have our pilots fly the missions, whether it's a routine system maintenance inspection or a special request by a district, troubleshooting an outage or troubleshooting nuisance operations, even all the way down to our communications department has their own drone for community outreach and more of the cinematic applications.
Okay. Now, so when a service provider, what should a service provider understand when they're approaching an enterprise for work? In your eyes, in your opinion, what does Erik Bitzko look for when being approached by a service providing company to get under contract for whatever the reason may be?
Yeah, I've had a lot of folks reach out, and I think that the industry is kind of starting to solidify with the folks that are here to stay. And with that comes folks that have learned to adapt from the early years of I just come in and fly and just data dump a bunch of pictures and not really value add to the end user like myself. And you've kind of seen that transition over the last few years to more, hey, we're going to bring in turnkey operation. We've got pilots that can go out and collect the data. We've got linemen on staff that can review the data. We've got software to organize the data and deliver it in an easily digestible fashion. All the way to some folks that have reached out to say, 100% turnkey, where they even have construction contractors on staff or under contract, subcontract, I guess, to where, hey, we'll find and we'll fix the issues. So they'll find, identify, and fix what they find. So it alleviates a lot of the pain in the workflow that, a new utility that isn't necessarily accustomed to an inspection workflow, they'll take it all on themselves, and then all they have to do is really oversee the project and reap the rewards from the ROIs in that project.
Right, and then that's one of the things I've noticed throughout the last couple of years is the specialization of different service providers and the ones that stand out into different verticals that they service, whether it be ag, whether it be utilities, whether it be surveying and mapping. The ones that can deliver the most value in a specific vertical are the ones that are starting to get more and more consistent work in those verticals rather than a spray and pray. And their website has every application that UAS could be applicable for known to mankind. They're sort of honing in on what their experiences might entail. And if they have a couple of former linemen on their team that learned how to play or that learned how to fly the system, they just became a lot more valuable to a co-op, an enterprise utility, et cetera. So, and then
Exactly. And what you'll see is those folks that are working to build these long-term relationships instead of the one-off inspection and build, not every utility is going to want to have an internal department devoted to utilizing the drone technology. I think, it's a lot less burdensome, especially on smaller utilities in the co-op world, to outsource some of that and work and partner with those service providers to build that cycle-based inspection program or, whatever niche they're looking to solve in that specific utility. I think that's going to be a lot more beneficial for both parties long-term. And then, kind of as the landscape of the industry changes and drone is going to end up with some form or fashion of a hybrid program. I know, speaking for myself, I can't justify hiring 100 pilots because I can't keep them busy all the time. But if you look at a parallel there for some of the folks in the utility world, you have your construction crews, your operations department, right? They have their internal resources and they augment that force with contractors. And I think the utilities, when they start approaching scale with their drone operations, are going to kind of take that same format to where they do have their internal resources for more of their member-facing projects, and then they'll have contractors or third-party service providers that are going to be that force augmentator to where they can really scale and descale as needed, depending on what scope of the mission they're trying to accomplish.
Yep. Okay, so with you guys doing a lot of the data collection yourselves, data management is obviously another challenge that you guys have had to solve. How are you doing that, and why?
So we figured out at a pretty early stage that the Big Chief tablet and the manual folder construction isn't necessarily going to be the way. It's not going to be scalable, right? You're not going to be able to take that and scale it throughout the enterprise. It's a way to start at a very cost efficient way, or in a very cost efficient way. But at scale, you're not going to be able to do that. And there's a handful of softwares that are on the market, and some are emerging as kind of, they're here to stay, and there's some different methodologies there, right? We, again, take a hybrid approach to where we have a local software, and we also have the ability to process in the cloud as well. So the software that we're using gives us a level of flexibility to stay dynamic in the different applications that we may need. So if we're doing a spot inspection out in the field, we can collect the data, process it in the field, even without an internet connection, and start finding deliverables or start finding discrepancies that need to be addressed in the field without having to go back to the office, hook up to the internet, and post-process it. We're a rural co-op, so there's a lot of areas in our service territory that don't have internet connection, let alone radio connection. Our truck radios don't even work in some spots in our service territory.
What is exactly your service territory in terms of square mileage?
Say again?
Sorry, you lagged there for a second. What is your service territory in terms of square mileage?
So we have about 8,100 square miles of service territory in Central Texas. We go from just south of Fort Hood, and all the way down into San Antonio, and then out west as well, towards Junction, Rock Springs, Segovia area towards the border. So we've got kind of the suburbs of, and even now it's more turning a little bit more urban in Austin, and San Antonio's pushing out towards us, to super rural to where pump jacks have a higher population than people. So we've kind of got both situations there with our service territory and our breakdown. So being able to post-process in the field, especially in a storm restoration situation, you know, when we're out there making repairs during a storm, whether it's locally or mutual aid abroad, you know, the cell service and the internet out there is it's lacking, right? So having the ability to post process locally, you know, for example, in Hurricane Irma, when we were down in Florida, you know, I had a crab track that I was working on out of the back of my truck. I had 2 teams of drones flying out and back and dropping data off and flying sections at a time. And I was post-processing it on my laptop in the back of my truck. You know, there's some softwares out there that are strictly web-based that would struggle to help in that situation. So that's one of the reasons why we went with the software that we picked. You know, we use Powerline Inspector. It's been great for us. It's scalable. We haven't been able to break it yet, and we've run terabytes of data through it. And it's a big reason why we've been able to scale as quickly as we have been, because we have a data management platform that can keep up with whatever speed we're looking to scale at.
Right. And when I sat down with Mike at whatever show it was, and he kind of walked me through PLI, the thing that struck me was how functional it was.
Yeah, it's very pragmatic in its approach.
Yeah. You'll definitely find softwares that are sleeker but less functional and they solve less of a problem.
So no, they're definitely good softwares out there. I mean, and like I said, it's the data management platforms that are out there. It's definitely not a one size fits all. Our decisions for, you know, obviously business reasons that fit our business needs the most, but at the same time, you know, with the scalability that's there, I think that's one thing that people sometimes overlook. You know, and the price point is always, you know, being a co-op, our budgets aren't necessarily as big as some other utilities. So, you know, price point's definitely another reason why we went the route we went.
Right. We signed an agreement with PLI to automate some of our mission planning as well. So we're working with them on somewhat of a different regard. But
yeah, and that's one of the things that we've kind of messed with that too. You know, we've done some testing with that, and I think it lays the groundwork well to be able to do some of that flight planning all in one spot to set yourself up for success, especially when the BB loss, whether it's 107 or 135, gets figured out in kind of more of a legal standpoint. It's scalable. Again, it comes back to being scalable, and I think that, you know, PLI has that ability to be extremely scalable in an enterprise solution.
All right, so just one or two more questions here. Future at PEC for the program. What do you envision it? Let's just say 3 years from now.
So, if I had my way, you know, a drone on every truck. You know, ultimately the drones are a tool, and what we're kind of looking at in the next 1, 3, 5 years is really scaling that to the linemen in the district. So right now, we've got a handful of drones that we have ordered that we're looking to push out to the district. They're smaller platforms, not necessarily as industrial, say like a 210 or maybe a new 300 series. But it's a smaller, more portable drone that we could put in the hands of the linemen to use for those smaller inspections. So now they have the tool available to them. So we're looking to kind of scale it in that direction. Again, I use the bucket truck analogy more often than the industry. You know, the companies would adopt one, and it was very specific missions or very specific jobs rather. And then the usefulness kind of and the utilitarian purposes of it kind of got adopted. And, hey man, that's a really useful tool. We'd like more of them. And then it became, okay, we put one in each district and then one on each crew. And now each crew's got 2 or 3 of them. It's just that useful of a tool. And I think that you're going to see the drones as a whole follow that same technology curve of adoption. And that's kind of what we're doing as we push it out to the district. Is we're going to put a handful in each of the districts and let them get comfortable with it, get them used to using the tool in various use cases that are applicable to them, and then scale it from there. You know, as some folks are going to take onto it a lot faster than others, and the ones that want more drones are going to have the ability to get more drones. So that's where we're looking at kind of our long game and incorporating the technology into the enterprise as a whole.
Right. Yep. I remember you telling me the same thing in Houston last year. It's a really good analogy, and it's a good, I think it's a very strong and accurate prediction for where realistic scale could go. It's extremely feasible to throw a Mavic on every truck and be able to give somebody an extra tool. So, all right, what I had down here was 2 or 3 things, but for time's sake, we'll keep it to one. One thing you wish you knew before taking the job as program manager at PEC.
One thing
you wish you knew before taking the job. Good or bad?
I wish I would have known that I didn't need an expensive platform to start the program. I wish that I would have started with a smaller Mavic or some back then they didn't have Mavics. It was Phantom. Started with a Phantom platform and used that to work out some of the kinks in the workflow. And then as the program kind of grabbed momentum and speed, then start moving up to some of the larger platforms like the 210 or the 600 or something along those lines, all the way up to a fixed wing. When we get there. So starting small, starting real practical. I think that was one of the things that kind of caught me off guard. Say, hey, hold on, let's back up and crawl, walk, run. And we tried to hit the ground running, and I think it muddied the waters more than necessary, and kind of inhibited some of that scale initially.
Gotcha. Okay, so assuming we return to normalcy at some point in time in the next zillion years.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? What shows you coming to? What shows you going to? Where you speaking? I know that you're sometimes on panels and stuff like that. So what's on the schedule as of now that hasn't been canceled?
So the Marcus Evans, I believe it's the 4th unmanned in Atlanta, has been rescheduled towards here in a couple months. I'll be speaking there, doing a presentation. And then in September, there is a conference that I'm going to be on a panel with. I can't recall the name of it. I've got it right here, actually. Let's see. The UAS Cluster Initiative has a conference coming up, and I'll be doing that in Oklahoma City in September.
And then Energy, Drone, and Robotics again in November 10th?
Yes, sir. I will be participating in that as well. I don't know if I'm going to be on a panel yet or doing a presentation, but I'll definitely be walking around the floor and shaking babies and kissing hands.
Gotcha. Well, if you're not on a panel and you want to be, we're going to be on one, and we got room for you.
All right. I appreciate the invitation.
You got it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click stop recording, and that'll be that.
Cool.